Hey everyone, this is Mason Hutchison, and you're listening to HerbRally, your daily herbal podcast. We come out with new episodes about 5 days a week, so be sure to tune in often. Our goal for the show is to help you along your herbalist journey, no matter what stage you're at. We have over 708 episodes, so feel free to peruse those episodes, and you're bound to find something of interest. Today's episode is yet another edition of the Herbalist Hour, and in this one I'm joined by Lanny Kaufer. And Lanny has been giving herb walks in the Ojai, California area for 47 years now. So that's pretty incredible. It was really great to get to know Lanny a bit more in this conversation. I've heard of him for years now, but this was my actual first time meeting him via Zoom. So in this conversation, we chat about his early years, some of his mentors, including William Lasassier, the upcoming Ojai Herbal Symposium, his work with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., his passion for music, and a whole lot more. So speaking of the Ojai Herbal Symposium, we're actually sponsoring the event this year. And if you'd like to get 20% off your ticket, that's both virtual as well as in person in Ojai, you could use coupon code HerbRally23 when you're checking out. I will leave the discount code in the podcast show notes along with the website to get to the event page. Or you could just go to ojaiherbal.org, and that's spelled O-J-I Herbal. OJAI. I knew I was going to do that. ojaiherbal.org. Again, this is both virtual and in person, and it's taking place in mid-November. So to get all the details, click on the link in the podcast show notes. And don't forget to use coupon code HerbRally23. And I believe it's caps sensitive. So you capital H-E-R-B, capital R-A-L-L-Y. 23 to receive 20% off your tuition, your registration price for the Ojai Herbal Symposium. And as I mentioned, we go over the event in depth with Lanny here in this interview. So again, thank you to Lanny for joining me on the Herbalist Hour. Thanks to y'all for listening. Before we get into the show, I want to say a huge thank you to our presenting sponsor, and that is Oshala Farm. Oshala Farm and I go way back. I've known Elise and Jeff Higley, the owners, for years now. I visited their farm many times, and they grow some of the finest herbal products around. They grow 80 medicinal species. So if you'd like to learn more about Oshala Farm, you could go to oshalafarm.com. And when you purchase from them, you're helping support the Herbalist Hour. So we really appreciate it. If you're looking for some domestic organic herbs grown with love, look no further than Oshala Farm at oshalafarm.com. So big thanks to Elise and Jeff for being our presenting sponsor for the Herbalist Hour. Also wanted to say, if you ever want to join these Zoom Herbalist Hour conversations live, consider becoming an HerbRally Schoolhouse member. And that's one of the perks, along with exclusive content, a private Facebook group, and other things. If you'd like to learn more about the HerbRally Schoolhouse, simply go to herbrally.com/schoolhouse. And don't forget to use coupon code podcast at checkout to try your first 30 days for free. Again, one of the perks is you get to join in on these Herbalist Hour interviews live, and you could chime in and ask questions if you like. Yeah, and it's always a good time. So thanks to y'all for listening, and enjoy my interview with Lanny Kaufer. Talk to you soon.
Welcome to the Herbalist Hour. This is where community gather, merging the power of people and the flowers, the sweet and the bitter to the salty, the sour. Umami, it's time for the Herbalist Hour.
Welcome back to the Herbalist Hour. Today, I'm really excited to have on Lanny Kaufer. Welcome to the show, Lanny.
Hi, Mason. I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah, this is going to be great.
Yeah, I've been watching some of your interviews with some amazing people. And in fact, you may recall your first two podcasts way back when, number 1 and 2,
Yeah.
were some of my local friends and colleagues here in Ojai, California, Jiling Lin.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And Sonia Yamaguchi, the author of a wonderful children's book about Hawaiian plants.
That's so cool that you know the first two guests. Yeah. Geeling's right there in Ventura. Which we had the pleasure of visiting, I want to say last April-ish. Absolutely gorgeous town. Yeah, I think I might retire there someday. I'm really excited. Well, let's talk about the Ojai Herbal Symposium here in a few, because I definitely want to plug that. But I want to know what was a young Lanny like, and how did you get into plants?
Well, that is a long story. but I'll be happy to share what I can of it.
Please.
I really was not a plant person growing up. I'm not one of those people who could say, yeah, I'm a third generation herbalist and I used to go out with my grandfather in the woods. No, it was never like that. But as a freshman at UC Santa Barbara, I was very fortunate to have one of many great teachers that I've had. And I have to say that that's been a real blessing in my life, the wonderful teachers that I've had. And he introduced me to nature in a way that I just had never experienced it before. And that opened my eyes to the natural world, I guess. But then I do have an origin story that goes to visiting the Jemez Pueblo in New Mexico in 1967. And I won't go into that whole story, but I was visiting someone in the Pueblo for a few days, and I got a cold while I was there. So this man's uncle, an older man, brought me a bag of tea and explained to me how to make the tea and to inhale the steam and to drink the tea. So I did, and my cold went away. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty interesting. I got to check this out because I've always been a very curious person and, scholarly kind of person. So I got back home to Santa Barbara, where I was living at the time, and I found a book in the library on herbs called Back to Eden by Jethro Kloss. It's still one of the classics. And that really opened my eyes for this whole realm of medicinal herbs. But Jethro Kloss's book is geared to the East Coast and plants that came over from Europe. So there were virtually no plants from the West Coast in the book. So I was living in the foothills of Santa Barbara and I guess you could call it a commune. Yeah, it was a commune, a communal farm. And one of my neighbors there said, you should meet this guy, William, that moved in up the hill there. He's an herbalist. And I went, no way. So he was literally like right above our property. I could walk a trail up to his place. So I introduced myself, and I'm talking about William Lesaussier, who was my first herb teacher. And this is back in the early 70s, so like maybe 71, 72. And he was a genius. I say in the past tense because sadly he's no longer with us. He was really brilliant, a creative thinker, and very much an outdoorsman. He went around barefoot all the time. And so I started studying with him and learning about the plants that were growing around there and learning his unique system of formulating herbs that he had created. So he was holding workshops and I was studying with him personally, and I was going on these walks he was leading that he called herb walks. And to my knowledge, he is the first person that ever created an event called an herb walk. They were in Santa Barbara. Well, William moved on to greater glory on the East Coast after stopping over in Taos and became quite a well-known herbalist on the East Coast. And I'm sure any of your viewers who are familiar with the sort of the recent history of East Coast herbalism will know about William Lesaussier. So when he left after a couple of years, I felt like I'd learned enough about plants to start leading herb walks myself, because I've always just liked to share, information that I think, is valuable and useful, and especially regarding plants. So I started leading herb walks in 1976.
Wow.
And I've been leading them ever since. And it has just been, an amazing experience. I wasn't privileged to be able to make a career out of doing that back then, although I'm making an attempt at that now since I'm retired from teaching high school. I guess that's how I got into it. Yeah. And then from William, my next teacher was a Chumash woman. The Chumash are the native people of this land where I'm sitting right now in Ojai, California. And I met this Chumash woman through a class she was co-teaching through University of California Extension on Chumash plant use. And so I studied with her. And that was another amazing experience. I learned so much that I carry on today in my herb walks, including the whole attitude of approaching and asking plants for permission, giving thanks to the plants, the whole process of foraging that's done in a grateful and sustainable way that I learned from Juanita Centeno, my teacher. So I invited her to come over to Ojai and co-lead walks and workshops with me in Ojai, and I really, again, just blessed to have that one-on-one experience with someone like her, and to be introduced to Native American culture, at least in the form of the Chumash. My life's path connected me to several tribes. I started out on the Jemez Pueblo, and then I met and worked with Juanita representing the Chumash people, and I have since been blessed to participate in many ceremonies and other events with indigenous people of mostly the Southwest. And it's really formed who I am and my relationship to nature, and being able to understand and hopefully share with other people that we are a part of nature. We are nature. Nature is within us and without us, and we are just as much a part of nature as everything else. But our evolution has led us to a place where we can sit, inside our homes, inside our walls, and talk to each other on computers, seemingly removed from nature. And we do spend a lot of time in the modern life, not just right out, with the plants and the sunlight and the air. But it's important. And that's where herb walks come in. That's why I believe that's the most effective way for me to share my what I've learned, is to take people out into nature, and they're getting to go on a walk. So right away, they're getting exercise, they're breathing, their blood circulating, more blood going to the brain. So the brain is comprehending more. And then we're immersing ourselves in nature and learning about being mindful in nature, learning observation skills. And then I impart some of the information that I've gathered about the specific plants, and we collect some samples and we smell them and taste them and experience the language of the plants, because plants speak to us through all the other senses, the least of which being our sense of sound, other than the leaves rustling in the wind, or if you're psychic and the plants actually speak to you with some kind of voice. But to me, they speak to me with their smells and tastes and textures and what they look like and all the details of that. So I really enjoy the herb walks. And what makes it special to be on your podcast, Mason, is that when I got my domain,
I was going to bring that up.
herbwalks.com, like 12 years ago now, I was surprised that it was available.
Totally.
But I didn't have to get, herb walks with Lanny or Ojai herb walks. Herbwalks.com was available. So my thought was, wow, I could develop this into like a hub for all herb walks around the country, and have like a calendar. And so, well, my life didn't go in that direction. I didn't have the opportunity to be able to do that, but now you've done it.
That's right.
So it's there, this wonderful thing that I thought would be so great. You're doing it. So, my hat's off to you for doing that for everyone with HerbRally.
Absolutely. And that's how HerbRally started. And, now it's a podcast and YouTube and all that, but we've been listing herbalism events since 2015. You brought up connection to nature and being out in nature and how we're a part of nature. And I just wanted to share a quick story. Right before our call, I was outside. It was misting a little bit, but I just wanted to get some fresh air before the call. But for whatever reason, I was frantically going through my phone, or at least it felt frantically, like pointlessly checking my email and stuff like that. And then I was like, I need to chill before this call. And literally right when I did that, I looked up and a beautiful monarch started fluttering around me. I'm like, I would have had that moment if I just kept scrolling through the phone. But you mentioned you got herbwalks.com, and William Lasassier coined the phrase herb walk. That's so cool. I'm kind of curious, you started doing herb walks, if I remember from your website, 47 years ago. What were the early days like of giving plant walks, and how has it like evolved over time as far as like people's interest or the people joining you? Can you just kind of lead us through that process, what the early days were like all through now, if that makes sense?
Yeah, sure. I grew up so that I was an older teen and early 20s during the height of the 60s, which was, really a revolutionary time. And that's when I became an organic gardener and started eating organic food and growing organic food. And I opened an organic food store in 1971 in Ojai, all organic, which was pretty much unheard of, at that time. And I was part of a collective uh, called the Green Dot Co-op in Ojai, and we had a food collective. Uh, so attached to the building where we had the food distribution, collection and distribution, and the food co-op was an herb store. And I started leading my herb walks out of the store. So we would meet on the lawn in front of the store, and then we'd all drive to wherever the location was. And Ojai is very fortunate to be surrounded by natural environment. We're on the gateway to the Los Padres National Forest. We have preserves, and well, we didn't have the preserves then. What we had then were empty fields. That's a thing of the past in Ojai, but many of those areas have been purchased by the Ojai Valley Land Conservancy, which is just a wonderful organization that's created all this land, where people can continue to interact with nature for generations to come. So we would take off from the Herb Garden was the name of the store, and go out and walk around and look at plants. And my focus has always been on helping people to be comfortable in nature, to make friends with plants, to get to know the plants, so to learn their names, and how to identify them, to make a positive identification, because that, even with the best YouTube videos or whatever kind of videos, that can be challenging. There are some very fine points to learn about distinguishing different plants. Some are very easy to recognize, some are tricky, and some have poisonous lookalikes. So that's why I think it's valuable to go out and learn them in person.
Just a quick break from the show to thank our presenting sponsor, Oshala Farm. Oshala Farm is a beautiful and vibrant certified organic herb farm based in Southern Oregon, where they grow and sell over 80 different plant species. The founders, Elise and Jeff Higley, have been longtime friends, so I highly trust their growing methods and ethics. You'll love the potency and vibrancy of all the herbs they have to offer. To learn more and purchase their herbs and other organic goods, head to oshalafarm.com. So thanks once again to Oshala Farm for sponsoring the Herbalist Hour. Now back to the show. Enjoy.
So that's what we would do. And when I first started out, I would have, 3 or 4 people. I was pretty happy if I had 6 people. That was like a big group. And I learned early on that I was going to have to get out there and promote myself. So as much as I don't enjoy the egotistical side of having to get out and promote, that's part of it turns out that we've entered into an era of a kind of entrepreneurial economy, which you're well aware of, and a lot of people are participating in. So I had to learn to do that, and so I managed to increasingly get a few more people to show up for the walks, and it just grew from there. Now, I mentioned that I haven't been able to make a living doing that, so that was a weekend thing that I did every weekend pretty much for all these years.
That's cool.
And I had to make my living working in the family business or as a teacher, mostly as a teacher. And when I finally retired from my last teaching job, which was at a local high school as a special education teacher, then I devoted myself entirely to doing the herb walks and adding more special guests. And then in 2018, I founded the Ojai Herbal Symposium, which, I hope we'll get to talk about. Being a shameless self-promoter, I can talk about that.
We got to talk about the Ojai Herbal Symposium.
Yeah. And also because of my, long time of doing this, I came to the attention of the publisher, Globe Pequot Press, that publishes the Falcon Guides. And they asked me to write a guide to medicinal herbs of California. So I took on that project. I signed the contract in like January of 2020, and I started working on the book. And within a few weeks, I realized there's too much to write. There's no way I'm going to meet their deadline. They wanted the book back in 3 months. And when I signed the contract, I went, oh yeah, I'll make it work. And then I realized this is not going to happen. So long story short, the pandemic hit in March of February, March of 2020, and everything shut down, and all of their schedules and deadlines kind of had to go out the window. So I had the whole year to write the book, and that's what it took. And thanks to my beloved wife, Rondia, for keeping me on a schedule. She had me print up a daily schedule and forced me to stay off of social media and not do anything else, just write the book every day. Otherwise, I couldn't have done it because I am a very curious person, so I'm easily distracted. So
I don't have a copy of the book. Are there pictures in it? And if so, who took all the pictures?
There are 40 plus photographers.
Oh, gotcha.
That I enlisted for the book. So I took a lot of the photos, but I'm not a photographer. I don't have the right equipment. I have my phone camera, basically. So there's a lot of great photos in there. I'm sorry I didn't. I'll have the publisher send you a preview copy for sure.
Oh, no worries. I was just kind of curious. I when I was doing research for this, I was like, oh, Lanny's an author too, amongst a lot of other things that we're going to get to as well. But that's exciting stuff. So I guess one of the silver linings to the pandemic, if you could call it that, would be you had time to write a book.
Yeah, I did. No, it was again, you're right. If you can call it that, but it was kind of a blessing to have that time that everyone was hunkered down, learning to use Zoom.
Right.
I'm late to that party. I'm still figured that all out.
You're here. So,
but I was, writing the book, and it was kind of the ideal time to have a sort of forced isolation to be able to do that. So I surrounded myself with my physical library of scores of books on herbs, and I started adding to that library. And then I dove into the internet, and I went deep, what they call a deep dive, into the literature that's out there. So much so that my book is a field guide, but it has 350 citations, like footnotes, like you see in a college textbook. And when I told the publisher that I was going to be doing that, or I had been doing it, but I told them, well, there's going to need to be this section at the end of the book, the citations and the bibliography. And they said, oh, no, we don't do that with field guides. I said, well, you wanted a book on medicinal herbs, and I don't feel right about publishing something stating that herbs can possibly do this or that without having some studies to back it up.
Smart.
So I have those, and I'd like to direct anybody that has my book or is going to purchase my book to go to my website at herbbox.com, where I have a hyperlinked bibliography for the book, because I hate having to sit there with a print book with 100-character URL and then go back and forth to my browser and type it in there. I've never found a way to do that. So I made a hyperlinked bibliography.
Very cool. Well, maybe in future editions, have you heard of QR codes?
Yeah, I have a QR code on flyers that I put up for the book.
Oh, okay. Well,
but go ahead. But what were you going to say?
Oh, I was just going to say you could do a QR code for the bibliography and a future editions of the book where someone could just scan it and then take them right to the
in future editions. I'm hoping there'll be a second edition because I have a
Yeah,
lot of notes, to
I
add.
bet.
But in the meantime, it's in its third printing, so I'm pretty
Awesome.
happy about that.
That's great. Well, we
Yeah,
will link to that in the podcast show notes. That
great.
does segue nicely into, you brought up the Ojai Herbal Symposium. I want to say this is the third
Yeah,
annual. Do you want to talk a little bit about what the
yeah,
event's all about?
sure. I'd love to.
Yeah,
It's not the third annual technically because we had to pause, during the
of course.
pandemic. So it's the third. We did it in 2018 and 2019,
Gotcha.
and now we're able to go back in person. And since Zoom and other platforms entered the world, we're also offering it online.
That's awesome.
And even though the speakers are all from California, the content is universal for anybody interested in herbs. So, do you mind if I do a quick rundown of
Absolutely.
who's
Yeah. Let's
speaking?
hear all the
Yeah.
details.
Okay. So it's November 11th and 12th. In person, it would be in Ojai, and we have well, first of all, Ojai is a really amazing, beautiful place that I know some of your viewers have heard of or visited. And within Ojai, there's a very special place called the Crotona Institute of Theosophy. And they have beautiful grounds sitting on their own private hill, kind of right in the middle of Ojai. And on the grounds is a 100-year-old hall that's just beautiful and historic. So the in-person event is in the hall, and then we're also offering live stream through Zoom. So we start Friday night. The night before, we have a renowned author and tea blender in our town named Zina Musica, who founded Zina's Gypsy Teas. And she's written a book about life by the cup, it's called. And she now has a new line called Magic Hour Teas. And she has a shop in Ojai called Club Magic Hour. She would be a great guest for your
I
show.
would love to. In fact, right before getting on the call, my wife and I, Amanda, we were looking at her Instagram, and
Oh,
Amanda's
yeah.
obsessed with her photography. She does a beautiful job.
Yeah. Yeah. So she's Friday night before the symposium, she's going to do a meet and greet
Nice.
at her shop, and everybody who's coming to the event is invited to join her there and bask in her aura for a couple of hours.
That'll be fun.
Then a Saturday morning, our event opens with a blessing from a local Chumash elder, Patrick Tumamite. One of the things that I learned from my experience with Juanita and for my experience in Native American ceremonies is acknowledging the local tribe of the area that you're in. So I always start my herb box by acknowledging the Chumash, and I usually sing a Chumash welcoming song and invite people to join me. And hopefully over time, people that return for repeat visits are learning the song. I noticed, that Rosemary Gladstar also uses songs in her
Yes, that's right.
practice. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, so he's going
I just sang with Rosemary at an event 2 weeks ago.
Oh,
She had the whole crowd in song, and I want to say she does a very similar one each time. But yeah, please continue.
Yeah. So Patrick's going to sing a song and do a Chumash blessing. Then our keynote speaker on Saturday is Amanda McQuaid Crawford, a renowned herbalist, author who's spoken and presented at many herbal conferences over the years. She has a really amazing practice where she's now added marriage and family therapist to her long list of degrees in herbal medicine. And she's doing a presentation on botanical medicine for common cardiovascular concerns. The theme of the symposium is herbs, the people's medicine. And, the idea being that herbs have always been the people's medicine. And 60% of the world still relies on herbs as their primary healthcare. And so the focus of the symposium is on herbs for everyone. It's designed to be informative for professionals like herbalists, acupuncturists, doctors of Oriental medicine, naturopaths, etc. But it's also accessible to anyone interested and herbs, because I personally, I sometimes call myself an herbalist, but I'm really technically more what you would call a folk herbalist. So, and that's any person that goes out and collects plants, and that could be in your own garden or on your windowsill, and collects herbs, which are any concentrated edible or medicinal plant is an herb. So anyone that collects herbs and uses them is an herbalist. I'm not a clinical herbalist. I don't have a degree. I'm not a doctor. I did study naturopathic medicine in college, but I didn't go in that direction. I became a teacher instead of a doctor. So folk medicine, folk herbalism, that's my realm. And that's what I like to share with people, that the plants are here for all of us. Nobody owns the plants. We all have a birthright to use plants and to grow plants, all plants. But I won't get political because I can easily. So
No,
that being said, so we're keeping it like, again, Amanda's topic, botanical medicine for common cardiovascular concerns, which should be of interest to a lot of people because heart disease are the number 1 and 2 causes of death in America. Our second presenter is an amazing person that I've been privileged to work with for the last 10 years or so. That's Dr. Jim Adams, Professor Emeritus of Pharmacology from the University of Southern California School of Pharmacy. He is a rare person within that realm who has over 200 journal articles published, taught at USC, a very prestigious university for over 30 years, has written several books, but he only studied plants. Show me another pharmacologist in the academic world who is studying plants and not working with grants from the pharmaceutical industry. They are hard to come by. So Jim is really amazing. He's done some groundbreaking work on Alzheimer's disease and plants, herbs that can be used. So he's talking on causes, prevention, and treatment of Alzheimer's disease. Then we have one of my teachers, John Hickey, licensed acupuncturist and shiatsu master, who co-founded the Santa Barbara College of Oriental Medicine. And he's going to be speaking on a classical Chinese medicine overview of the 3 treasures, which is something that's familiar to acupuncturists and those familiar with Oriental medicine. And I won't get into the weeds of that, but it's important. It's an important concept in classical and Chinese medicine, a kind of integration of the body and mind through what they call the 3 treasures. And he's going to be presenting a classical Chinese overview as opposed to the traditional TCM, the modern version. We have Elena Esparza, a chiropractor from Los Angeles, who also studies the ancient Mexican tradition of curandismo, which is kind of I guess you call the folk medicine of Mexico, which has a long and relatively uninterrupted history, as you can find in Europe and other countries, not so much in the United States, but I'll get back to that in a minute. So she's going to be talking about herbs in the curandismo tradition, which is going to be really interesting and adds to the diversity of our presentation, of our symposium, which you'll see. Then the closing talk on Saturday is Enrique Villaseñor, who has become an expert on opuntia, which is the Latin name for prickly pear. Prickly pear is found throughout the country. I found them all over the Southwest, but even on the beaches of South Carolina, the eastern prickly pear. So it's the original survival food of Native America. And it's an amazing edible medicinal food. And Enrique is the person to talk about it. So his talk is entitled Opuntia the first medicine of the Americas. Then on Sunday, our keynote speaker is David Behrman, physician from Santa Barbara, former executive director of the American Academy of Cannabinoid Physicians, who wrote the book Cannabis Medicine. He is well qualified to speak on the subject of cannabis as a medicine, and has been doing so long before cannabis was actually legalized in California as a recreational drug, but his focus has always been on the medicinal properties. So he's talking on 10 medical cannabis myths debunked, because there is so much misinformation in this age of misinformation that we live in about cannabis. So he's going to straighten all that out. Then our next speaker is someone that is going to be one of your podcast visitors pretty soon, Carol Wade, another amazing colleague and collaborator of mine who I've met here in Ojai. Carol is a clinical herbalist. She has the Ojai School of Herbal Studies, and she also maintains a just amazing garden that really is a treasure. It's called the Earth Island Medicinal Herb Garden. And I wish I could go into detail about that, but you know what? Come back, folks, and tune in for Mason's interview with Carol and learn about her amazing garden.
I'm really excited to chat with her.
Yeah, so she's one of those people that, you know, she gets down there and gets her hands in the dirt every day, and she maintains this amazing garden with medicinal herbs from all over the world, many of which can grow in Ojai. So she's talking about, the topic is creating a people's medicinal garden. This is one of the ways that we can spread herbalism, is by growing community medicinal herb gardens, by having our own personal medicinal herb gardens, by encouraging farmers to grow medicinal herbs, etc. Because we can't just rely, as people have in the past, on just going out and collecting everything from nature. There's just too many people, and if we're successful in spreading the gospel of herbs, then there are going to be more people that want to use herbs. So already we have great farmers like Oshala Farms and Jeff and Elise in Oregon, who are doing that work, that vital work of growing the herbs in quantities and processing them and making them available for sale. But we could decentralize that too and have herb gardens, you know, all over the country. So,
hey, Lanny, did you know that Oshala Farm is the presenting sponsor for the Herbalist Hour?
I did, actually.
Okay,
yeah,
awesome.
I've been watching them. Yeah.
Well, shout out Oshala Farm, but yeah, please continue.
Yes. And then after Carol, we have Anjali Deva, who is a certified Ayurvedic practitioner, also an author from Los Angeles area, and just a delightful young woman. And she's going to be speaking on creating rhythms and rituals with Ayurveda. Ayurveda is one of those traditions that I've really, I can't say I've embraced it entirely, but it's really become a part of my life, incorporating the concepts of Ayurveda, because it's a people's medicine. That's what I'm about. And it is a true people's medicine designed for everyone in, you know, that knows about it, or everyone in India where it comes from, to learn it, especially the people who cook the meals for the family, because they understand that food is medicine, that foods are herbs. Herbs are just, you know, what we call herbs are more concentrated foods, but we're eating herbs all the time. Every time we eat a vegetable or drink a tea of any kind, even coffee, tea, you know, Chinese tea, we are using herbs. So everyone can benefit from understanding these rhythms and rituals of Ayurveda, especially at this time of year around the equinox when we're going through the change of seasons. Then we have Michelle Wong, also an author, acupuncturist, and Chinese medical doctor, who's going to be speaking on, her topic is magical mugwort, its medicinal uses from East and West. Mugwort is one of those very common plants that are available for all people to use. There's no danger of it going extinct. In fact, it's so common that as Jim Adams, one of our speakers, points out, it's one of the 5 plants that can be found around the world, and wherever it's found, it's considered a native of that place.
Wow.
So usually plants have an origin story, right? They're
Right.
native to one spot, and then they get carried around, and they're naturalized or they're non-native other places. But mugwort is one of these 5 plants that are considered native everywhere that they're found. So this should be of interest to anybody, even internationally, that wanted to attend our symposium online, because mugwort is so useful and so available. Just a wonderful plant. And then I'm closing the symposium with my talk called A People's History of Herbal Medicine in America. And that's where I get political.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Well, I wrote an introductory chapter for my book, Medicinal Herbs of California, called A Brief History of Medicinal Herbs in America. And I uncovered the history of why herbs disappeared from the U.S. Pharmacopoeia, which is the big book that doctors have to prescribe from. If a drug rather is not in that book, it is not a prescriptable drug. And while that book used to be 80% plants, now it's down to a tiny fraction of plants and a larger percentage of maybe 20% of drugs that are derived from plants. So there's a history of how plants disappeared from the pharmacopoeia, how colleges disappeared that taught naturopathic medicine, botanical medicine. And when I wrote this chapter and submitted it to the publisher, I was sure they were going to kick it back and say, I'm sorry, but we can't publish this because it names some names of some very powerful corporations and entities that, we don't want to tangle with. And I probably shouldn't even be saying that right now and giving them any ideas, but it's too late. The book's out there. And nobody's said anything about it so far. And I won't mention those names right here.
Okay.
But they're in the book, and the good news is that there is a groundswell of interest in herbs again, which really started in the 60s, but it's just been growing and growing. And I'm a member of the American Botanical Council, so let's give them a shout out.
Yeah.
They keep track of herb sales, and they just keep going up every year. It's up to right now in 2022, I think the last year they did any statistics. It could be even earlier than that, maybe 21. The American public spent over $12 billion on herbs. That's a significant chunk, right?
Yeah.
And none of that was spent through any prescription plans or pharmacies, other than the over-the-counter remedies. On my walks, that's how I describe herbs: the ancient over-the-counter remedies.
Yeah.
Now, they can become more than that in the hands of a skilled, trained herbalist. Then they can become true medicine. But for all the rest of us, think of them as ancient over-the-counter remedies.
I love that.
Because I wanted to also tell you, for those that attend our symposium in person, we have some lunchtime activities. On Saturday, John Hickey, who's doing the talk on classical Chinese medicine, is going to lead a Qigong exercise outdoors. Hopefully, we'll have our usual November weather in Ojai when you can comfortably be outdoors. And then on Sunday, we have a certified nature and forest therapy guide, Elena Rios, who's going to do a nature immersion activity outdoors for people, an introduction to the work that she does in taking people out into nature and helping them to be comfortable and learn that mindfulness that comes from being in nature, but sometimes needs to be cultivated. As we unplug, as you experienced, earlier, as we learn to unplug from all of our devices, which are essential in the modern life, but they can be a barrier between us and just our direct connection with nature.
Well, I have a question about the event. It sounds almost as if there's one class per session and the whole crowd gathers and watches this one session, or are they split apart and you kind of pick and choose which class you want to go to? Because a lot of the herb conferences I go to, there's different like speakers at the same time.
Right,
But is this one where,
multiple locations.
is this one where it's like everyone watches the same one at the
Yeah,
same time?
everyone is gathered in this
I love
amazing
that.
hall,
That's
and
awesome.
and just the talks go on one after the other, with breaks.
I love
Yeah,
that.
it's all there. We've tried in the past to have satellite things going on at the same time, and frankly, it just got too complicated, and getting people the directions to get to the places. For whatever reason, I decided to just focus it all in this amazing place that we are
Yeah.
so lucky to be able to use in this hall. So that's how we're doing it.
I used to organize the free herbalism project when I worked for Mountain Rose Herbs, and we did it the same way. We would have one stage, and the whole audience would gather for this one class. And I think it's actually really good for community building. And then after the class, people could talk about it and all have the same experience and whatnot.
Oh no, absolutely. That's
Yeah.
that's such a big part of it is community building,
Yeah.
which you get the kudos for that because that's what
Yeah.
you're doing with your platform. But I like to think that I'm doing that too.
Absolutely. So it's we talked pre-call about a potential discount code for the HerbRally audience. Did you want to share that with everybody?
Yeah. So we have set up a discount code for HerbRally viewers, and another discount code, deeper discount code for HerbRally subscribers. And the basic discount code is just HerbRally, which a person would enter at checkout when they're signing up for the event. But right now we don't have the other one. I don't have the other one set up yet, so I don't know the exact name of the other one. So you and
I'll
I
get
will
that.
have to figure that part out. But your subscribers will find out because they're subscribed, right? So
That's
they'll
right.
be hearing from you.
Yep, that's right. And that goes for both
Yeah.
the in-person event and the virtual event then?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes, it does. And also for acupuncturists out there, or if you folks watching know any acupuncturists who might be interested in this, it's available in person or online for everyone. But acupuncturists can earn up to 12 continuing education units if they're California acupuncturists.
Oh.
And there's no extra charge for those units.
Very cool. Well, as we wrap up here, thank you for sharing all that. By the way, I'm kind of bummed that I'm gonna have to miss the event, but I'm gonna make it out one of these years. So I'm sure you'll keep hosting these Ojai Herbal Symposiums. But I would like to kind of close on getting to know you a little bit better, Lanny. When I was reading your, do you mind if I ask you about your early days working with, say, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.? I was very curious about that, and
Yeah.
I thought it might be a fun way to kind of wrap up the show.
Yeah, sure. Well, that is certainly, in my own autobiography, that would be an essential piece of the story. And this was another lifetime. Well, it continues today, but it was another time in my life before I got interested in plants. And I grew up with a certain, political activity on the part of my parents. And I was growing up in an environment in a junior high school and high school with aware history teachers. So we're talking the late 50s, early 1960s. And I became aware of the civil rights movement. And at the same time, the Vietnam War was going on and I was approaching draft age. So I did an assignment for a history class on Gandhi. And I read Gandhi's autobiography and I read biographies about him and really got into that. And I realized that I'm basically a nonviolent person and that nonviolence is the way to go. It's the only way, I believe, for groups and all the way up to nations, to resolve their issues. Because the other approach is mass suicide, right? So armed with that and watching the civil rights movement unfold on television, not personally in my life in San Fernando Valley in California, but on television. When I went to college, I was recruited by Dr. King and his organization, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, to participate in a project in the South in the summer of 1965 called the Scope Project. And I and about 300 other young people from around the country converged on Atlanta, Georgia for our orientation, where we got to hear Dr. King speak and many other leaders of the civil rights movement. It was really an amazing experience. And then we were sent out to different counties throughout the South to do voter registration work. And that's how I spent the summer of 65 and part of the summer of 66. And I mean, that really changed my life in ways that I just can't even describe right now. But to have that experience of living in, what you could almost call an indigenous community, of all Black folks. I was stationed in Sussex County, Virginia, in the rural part of the county, of the state rather, out in the pine forest, in the peanut fields, and trying to deal with a extremely racist voting system that prevented Black folks from being able to vote. And I learned a tremendous amount about community, about people having each other's backs, about how to affect change within the system. And we had a successful project, and we got a lot of people registered to vote. But that's a whole other story. I have another website for that,
Yeah.
actually. If anybody's really interested in that, they can go to civilrightsvet.com.
Awesome.
And there's the whole story is there. And I'm still a member of that project today because we had a reunion and started a group to carry on the work. So that group is now called Scope 50 because we started it at the 50-year anniversary of that Scope project. So that experience in the South was part of the experience that kind of left me feeling a little bit like an outsider in modern American culture, as a white person. Yeah. And I think is part of why I've been drawn to African American culture and Native American culture ever since as sources of wisdom that's been, carried down through those oral traditions that I like to think I'm carrying on by talking to you right now and by doing my herb walks and workshops and symposia, etc.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for all of your good work. I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't ask Lanny about your musical career and talents. Are you still performing? Are you still writing music? Are you still doing all of that? Because I was listening to a little bit. Actually, I found you on Spotify. So that's pretty sweet. Are you still doing music stuff?
Yeah, not as much as I would like to. It's had to take a back seat since I started writing the book.
Yeah.
I've actually mostly been composing raps for the last few years.
Really?
Yeah. So if you're interested in those, they're mostly kind of political. That's where I exercise my political side. Although my album, The High Road, which you heard on Spotify, is also informed by my worldview, which, tends to be, kind of political. But on SoundCloud, you can find me at Dr. K-Dog. Long story behind where that the handle came up, but my students gave me that basically when I was rapping for them. I don't call myself a rapper because I can't freestyle. So any true rapper can freestyle, but I can compose some rhymes, and put them to beats. So you can check those out on SoundCloud, Mason.
That is badass. I will.
I know you have a rap on your theme for the.
We do, and yeah, that's by Seattle-based Torrin Frost, and he's actually going to be writing and composing an entire rap album based around herbalism. But that's about I think maybe a year or two out. But very, very excited for that, and very exciting for me to find out that you're a rapper as well, or like you said, a composer of rhymes.
Yeah, so I used to compose songs on the guitar and piano. My main instrument personally is the harmonica. I have all the gear to play blues harmonica, and I love to sit in with blues bands and do that. But
Awesome.
yeah, my album, as I said, it's informed by my experiences with nature and plants and indigenous culture, etc.
Well, when we get together in person, Lanny, I'm going to ask you to perform the harmonica for the next interview we do. So
Okay. All right. Good. Well,
that'd be sweet.
I really look forward to that, to having you out here in
Heck yeah.
California.
Heck
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, like we said, I want to go visit Jiling again out there, and
Uh-huh.
maybe I'll time it with the Ojai Herbal Symposium. But I haven't said your well, we said herbwalks.com, but then
Yeah.
the Ojai Herbal Symposium one is ojaiherbal.org, if I recall correctly.
That's right. OjaiHerbal.org. You can get to it easily from my herbwalks.com website. And they're both kind of linked to each other. But OjaiHerbal.org has all the details about the symposium. We have advanced prices going right now up until November 1st. So please, folks, check it out.
Yeah, please do. And thank you so much for your time today, Lanny. That was a lot of fun. I'm really excited for our next chat. I'm excited to speak with Carol Wade because I actually haven't met her yet. So any closing thoughts as we wrap up here?
Well, I just want to encourage people to follow their hearts, to pursue their passions, whatever that may be, but especially if it's in the world of herbs, you are living in a moment right now. This is a time where we still have access to some of the ancient wisdom about herbs from the European traditions. So many people have relatives and ancestors that practice with herbs. And whatever knowledge we've still been able to glean from Native Americans. And we have modern science. We now have laboratories studying herbs around the world, even clinical trials being done on herbs, at least in Israel, where they don't have to deal with the FDA, which produced the product Sambucol. So this is a moment in time when there's a lot of information available. There's a lot of interest. And with social media and the internet, there's nothing holding you back from exploring herbs. And there's so many ways to get involved with herbs, whether it's teaching, products, healing, cooking, you name it. It's been fun for me. I hope that comes across. I still learn something new about plants every single day, just going out to my garden or my compost pile. Yeah. So compost, that's another thing I want to share with people. Compost.
Absolutely. Amen to that. Well, you're a fascinating guy, Lanny. I really enjoyed getting to know you. You're a author, activist, herbalist, rapper, all the above. So I really appreciate you taking the time to join us on the Herbalist Hour. And with that, we will talk to you in the next episode.
All right. Bye, Mason. Bye, everybody.
And that's going to do it for today's episode. Thanks so much for listening to the HerbRally podcast. If you'd like to hear more from us here at HerbRally, we now have a text message community, believe it or not. Basically, it's just updates from us. We send about 1 to 7 texts per week, notifying you about new events, videos, courses, podcasts. You get the idea. It's pretty much like our email newsletter, just in text form. So if you'd like to receive text messages from HerbRally, just text JOIN, that's JOIN, to the number 541-256-2895. Again, that's JOIN to number 541-256-2895. And to stop receiving texts, that's easy too. Just text STOP to the same number. It'll opt you out immediately. Okay, thanks again for listening. Have a great rest of your day.